So you're ready to buy a new camera. If this is your first camera, I know that can be a little terrifying. I'm here to help you get over that. This is a video especially made for you if you are buying your first camera. What's going to be a little bit different about this video is I'm not going to tell you which camera to buy. I'm going to tell you about the things you need to look for in a camera so that you can make a better decision. The tips I'm going to talk about pretty much apply to all levels of photography, except professional. I'm not talking to professionals here. I'm talking to people who are just getting into it, getting serious about their photography. The most important thing I want to say right off the top is that a new camera is not going to make you a better photographer. The camera is a means to an end, so I want to level that expectation right now. If you're looking to buy a camera to become a better photographer because of the camera, you're not ready. If you're looking to buy a camera because there's things you want to do in photography that the new camera will allow, great, let's get into it. Okay, first things first. The first thing I have to tell you, and you really have to trust me on this, there is no best camera. And by best, I mean best camera brand. There just isn't. All of the cameras from most of the leading manufacturers, and I'm right now thinking of the big three that I'm familiar with, Canon, Nikon, and Sony, they're all really good. They're not equal. They each have their pros and cons, but those pros and cons at your stage, just getting serious about photography, will lead you into rabbit holes you don't need to be in right now. What I want to convince you to focus on is the features you need to be aware of in cameras that will make you successful in your photography. The most important thing I'm gonna stress to you is that your learning will make your camera journey more or easier. What do I mean by that? I'm going to, right off the top, tell you that if you're really getting serious with photography, you have to commit to using your camera in manual mode. I can't tell you the number of people I've seen buy a really nice camera and let the camera do the thinking for them, and they wind up never being able to think for themselves, so they always chase their tails with their photography, never being quite sure how to improve. The reason that's happening to them is because the camera is thinking, not them. I want you to commit and focus yourself and dedicate yourself to learning manual photography, f-stop, shutter speed, ISO. And once you do that, most of the features that are sales points of these cameras really fall away, because those three things can be done on any decent camera. If you struggle, or if you're still learning manual photography, I'm going to leave a link in the comments to a guide that I offer on how to do manual photography, how to learn it from the ground up. If you're looking at buying a camera and you don't know how to do that, number one, commit yourself to learning how to do photography manually. Okay, the next thing I want you to realize is that when you're buying a decent camera that will allow you room to grow in your photography, you're really buying a system. It's not just the camera body, it's the camera body, the lens, and a means of dealing with the files that it produces. You have to think of it that way. The camera body is the second most important part of that. Honestly, the most important part is the lens. And you've got to realize that when you're looking at camera bodies, the lens decision is going to be right there with you. It cannot be an afterthought. Because of this, your first major decision is budget. You have to decide how much you're willing to invest in what you're doing with photography. So obviously, if you're investing in a system, when you think about your budget, you have to take into account how much you're going to spend for the camera body, how much you're going to spend for the lens, and how much you might need to deal with some sort of computer to deal with the files that your photography is going to generate. Some of the higher end cameras can create some really large files. The ones I'm going to recommend to you today, not so bad, but I don't know what kind of computer you have, so I don't know these files you're going to easily from a session be getting into gigabyte range. And if your processor's not very fast, you're going to be aggravated fooling with the images to try and, retouch them or play with them or whatever you're going to do. That's no fun. So think about that. Now, most cameras that you see at this, especially at the level I'm going to be talking about, come with what they call kit lenses. A kit lens is an inexpensive lens that you will often see bundled with a camera. The kit lenses are almost always not very good. And if you've got a decent camera body and you spend good money for it and you get a bargain lens on it, that bargain lens is going to totally control your image quality. It's just a fact of life. It doesn't matter how good the body is. If the lens is mediocre, your photography will be mediocre. I'm just giving it to you straight. Let me give you an example from the Canon system, which I'm familiar with, to illustrate this point. The Canon EOS RP is a good entry-level camera for someone just getting serious about photography. It sells for right under $1,000, $999, something like that. It's got all the features you need to create good photography. No, it's not top of the line, but you're just starting. And it can do great images. It can do better images than you can when you're just starting. Now, I've seen this camera, as I said, sell for just under $1,000. I've also seen it sell for about just under $1,200 bundled with a kit lens. Now, that might sound like a bargain. It's not a bargain. What you've got is a $1,000 camera with a less than $200 lens. It's like putting a lawnmower engine in a sports car. It might look great, but it's just not going to get you where you want to go in the way you expect. You get what you pay for in life, right? And I want to see you spend your money where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in your photography. So what do? You have to set your expectations. If you're spending less than the cost of your camera body on your lens, you're probably limiting yourself via the lens. It's just the way it is. So if the lens is 1/4 the price of the body, you've just made a decision that your photography really is only as good as a $200 lens. Okay, so what am I recommending then? That kit lens I was talking about was a 24 to 105 zoom range from 24 millimeters to 105, but it was a kit lens. It was very inexpensive. The reason I'm talking about this lens is that's a good range when you're just starting out. You can go from wide angle to semi-telephoto, and you can do a lot of photography with that one zoom lens. Now, let's flip it. You can get that same lens in Canon's professional lens, because I will never tell you to not buy a professional lens, even if you're not a professional, because that lens will hold its value and last much longer in your photography. You probably won't ever get better than that lens. Canon has a 24 to 105. They call it an L lens. It's their professional line. I actually use one for 70% of my photography. That lens alone goes for $1,200. It's $200 more than the camera body I'm talking about. You put those two things together, I could take that combination and do my work with it. The camera body is not quite as good as what I use, but I guarantee you, unless I'm blowing up billboard-sized prints, nobody would know. And you've come in at an entry point that you can survive if you're getting serious about photography. That's very important. If you want to get serious about photography, there's a budget entry point, and you and me and everybody else don't like it, but it's what it is. Okay, I know you want a feature list. This is going to be really short, but I'm going to give you the features of the camera that I think you need to have. Remember, this is for photography, not videography. That would be a little bit different. Okay, number one, you need to have a camera that was made within the last 5 years. There's been a lot of changes in the last 5 years in cameras going into the mirrorless movement. I want you to start off on something that's pretty new. Next feature is you want to have the ability to do interchangeable lenses. We've talked about this quite a bit so far, and anything I'm recommending at these price levels of about $1,000 is going to have interchangeable lenses. Next, you want the ability to manually set the f-stop, shutter speed, and ISO. In fact, at this price point, I don't think you're going to find a camera that doesn't allow you to set that. You also want a camera that allows you to do the semi-automatic modes of shutter priority, aperture priority. Not going to go into what those are here, but you'll come across them relatively soon in your photography career. They're pretty useful modes. There's a time when you would want to use them. The last thing is you want to have a hot shoe on the top of the camera where you can attach a flash. Some cameras have built-in flash, some don't. I don't think a built-in flash is important because they're always so small. They tend to do very harsh flash, so that's not an important feature to me. The ability to attach flash and use external flash, however, very important. That's it. That's the only features I consider essential on a beginner's camera. So how do you choose which system you want to get into? Well, I'm gonna give you a few guidelines. You want a system that has plenty of lenses because honestly, going forward, that's going to be the most important thing. Canon, Sony, Nikon, they all have plenty of lenses. You can't go wrong with any one of those three. Next, I'm going to tell you, the first thing you want to do is shut off your computer and go to the store where these cameras are, pick them up, use them. A camera store will definitely allow you to do that, and will have someone who knows what the heck they're talking about to answer your questions. There's a lot of intangibles here. It's an art. You have to look at a camera that gets you excited and makes you want to shoot. And so each of them have their own little idiosyncrasies, and they do things a little bit differently that appeal to some people, don't appeal to others. Have fun with the search, but know that if you're sticking with one of those three systems at that price point level, they're all going to be good. Not equal, but they're all going to be good. They got their pros and cons. No big deal. You can't have everything. You can't make a choice that's perfect. Don't try. You'll have more camera than you need. Trust me, you will. Buying a camera really is the easy part. It's learning photography and learning how to make that camera fly that really is the hard part. It's like a violin, right? Anybody can spend a fortune on a really good violin. How many people can really play it? Photography's not that hard. Don't get the wrong idea. It's not hard to do good photography, but embrace the learning more than the equipment, and you will never be upset by the whole undertaking. Once again, I want to remind you, if you're a beginner and you still don't have manual photography, back to front, in the comments, I'm going to have a link to my guide to exposure control that will start from the very beginning level and tell you the rudiments of what you need to know to use f-stop, shutter speed, and ISO on any camera. I've got some other videos talking about cameras at the link I'll post here if you're interested in going further. I appreciate your time watching this video. I hope you've gotten something out of it, and I hope you enjoy your journey in buying your first camera. Until the next video, cheers.